Welcome back. Well, let's shift the focus now from hospitals to the FMCG space. ICICI Securities has come up with interesting insights on how the sector has been performing lately with respect to both the listed versus the unlisted players. Mangalam, tell us about the analysis.
Well, it's very interesting, Ekta. That's largely because listed FMCG companies over the last few quarters have spoken about rising competitive intensity, tough operating environment, tough macros really to function in. So ICICI Securities did an analysis of the performance of both listed and unlisted FMCG players in the last few years, and the results are very interesting. Of course, this is with the caveats such as size and specific SKUs, etc., and specific categories of companies. So if you look at on an aggregate average basis over the last 3 years, the CAGR unlisted players have outperformed listed players in the revenue growth by about 160 basis points. In FY22, this outperformance was about 330 basis points, and in FY23, it widened all the way up to nearly 700 basis points. Now, while listed companies saw revenue growth in high single digits, closer to 9% in between FY19 to FY23, the average revenue CAGR, the unlisted peers saw a revenue growth of over 10% for the same period. Now, if you look at the trends in the FMCG internals, they're a little divergent. However, the outperformance has been largely in the home and personal care segment for FY23. If you look at it, HUL's top line grew by 16%, while the same for unlisted parts of P&G, which is again the home and personal care business, grew 26%. L'Oreal grew about 33%. And if you look at just the HPC vertical of HUL, it grew in upwards of 20%. So that is still lower than the unlisted peers. If you look at, the other players like Kellogg's, Hershey's, Mars, in the F&B chocolate space, Tata Consumer and Nestle actually underperformed with 11 and 14% growth itself. The others did well, largely because of one smaller base and their premium category products with more urban penetration instead of the other players that we're talking about out here. And Tata Consumer, of course, saw an impact of the pricing of some of its commodities as well. But in mass consumption categories like biscuits, listed players like Bector's, ITC Food and Britannia did a lot better than Parle-G with a growth of 5%. Britannia grew about 15% last year, with ITC growing about 20%. What are the reasons for the same? ICICI Securities says listed F&B players outperformed unlisted players, largely due to increased distribution in the food and beverage space, whereas higher competitive pressures at both the mass end and the premium end from digital first and D2C brands has led to the underperformance of listed home and personal care products, including the likes of GCPL, Tata Consumer and Jyoti Labs are the stocks that there are top picks. Why do they like them? Because they believe that these are companies which are on a self-growth path as against looking at the tough operating environment. So yes, the environment is tough, but in that as well, a lot of the unlisted players are doing a lot better than the listed players. And in the listed players, the ones who have their own growth paths charted out are the ones which are outperforming, and that's why they are the top picks.
Okay, all right. So an interesting take coming in on the entire FMCG space. Their top picks include GCPL, Tata Consumer as well as Jyoti Labs. We'll take a short break, but up next, Pritesh Mehta of Yes Securities will join in with some trading strategies. Stay tuned.